What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to explain the traction belt or drive belt, and this will be specifically for lawn tractors, but this may help guys with residential zero turns as well. But this video is going to be talking about the drive belt if your mower's not moving on these lawn tractors, residentials. So I recently bought this mower off of Facebook Marketplace. I got a great deal on it because it couldn't move. And in this video, I want to explain to you everything that it possibly could be. They're all pretty easy fixes, except for one gets pretty expensive, but more commonly, it's going to be a pretty easy fix. Now, one thing a lot of people don't realize is these mowers have two different belts. So you have one belt for the blades for the deck, then you have another belt that is sending power from the engine back to the transmission. So to see everything better, we're going to need to remove that deck, and I'm going to show you real quick how to do it on this specific mower here. But on any of these residential lawn tractors, if you just want to be able to take a quick peek to see if that drive belt is actually together, you can see it right there. It's much higher than the deck belt's going to be. And you'll see the transmission has a fan on top of it, of that input shaft. And so there is the drive belt or traction belt, and we can clearly see that it is intact and doesn't appear to be damaged. And that's actually the number one reason why these mowers quit moving, is that drive belt has either broken or has come loose from one of the idlers. Now, they are a wear item. You will need to replace them. I would say around 200 hours is about the life expectancy you can have out of one. And the bad thing is, when they break, they stop, then you're stranded. Wherever you are in the yard, you'll have to be pushing. You'll have to put it in neutral and push it wherever you need it to go. So a good rule of thumb, take a look at that belt, make sure it doesn't have too many cracks in it. Just give a visual inspection every once in a while, because it's easier to change it when you can drive it into your garage versus pushing it. So before I remove the deck, I'm going to take the time to blow it off with my air compressor, get it nice and clean before pulling it on in, raise it on up, and then lower the deck all the way to the floor to remove it. Also, I start from the front and I work my way back. I first undo the belt, and then I go from the first connection, center connection, and rear connection. Guys, removing these decks, it's pretty easy once you've done it a couple of times. Makes it a lot easier to do repairs and things of that nature. I've made other videos, one specifically on how to remove the John Deere 100 series decks. I'll put a link down in the description for that video. All right, now that we have that deck out of the way, I can show you the belt, the drive belt better. But just real quick, if you are going to drive this around and with the deck off, make sure you take that front deck link and take it out, and then also secure that where you don't run over it or it drag the ground. So there's our belt, and basically what happens is when the parking brake is off, this belt is tight around the crank pulley right here. And then when we apply the parking brake, this lever does two different things. It turns the drive belt tensioner into a position that loosens this belt, and the belt will stop moving because it's not tight enough against this pulley here to move. And then two, the second thing that this does is that it applies the brake that's on the transmission. So as you push down on the parking brake foot pedal, you're doing those two things. You're loosening up the drive belt, so it's not even turning, and therefore it doesn't send any power to the transmission. And then it also it tightens this up, and that tightens up a brake in the transmission. Then on the other side of your mower, you have your forward and reverse pedal. Well, this lever, this all does one thing. It's opening up a valve on the transmission right there. And so it opens it up one way when you go forward, and it opens it up the opposite way to go reverse. Alright guys, so if your belt is on there, not broken, let's go to the number 2 reason your mower's not moving, and that is a damaged or seized up drive belt tensioner pulley. Now on these tensioner arms, so when you engage the parking brake and disengage the parking brake, tightens and loosens the tensioner arm, and that arm will have 2 or 3 different pulleys on it. Some of them have 2, some of them have 3, and that is the second most common. Those things will wear out or break, the bearings get bad, they seize up, and that will eventually break your belt. And that is exactly what happened with this mower. I removed everything, removed the deck, got under there to inspect everything, and saw that this pulley was either installed improperly or something, but it looked fairly new, but it wasn't able to move, so that belt wasn't able to wore into this flat face pulley right here. Now those belts the drive belts are V-grooved as well, so on that one side of that belt is flat, the other side has a V-groove, and some of those idlers will be V-grooved. Now guys, when I first got there, before I bought this mower, I asked the customer that I was buying it from, I said, can you get on it and push down, let the brake off? And then when I saw that the brake was let off and she tried to move forward, the belt just stayed in the same position. So I knew the tensioner plate wasn't moving without the parking brake being pushed in or let off. That belt was staying the same. And so I got underneath there, and after finding this drive belt idler was bad, I found the spring, the tensioner spring that holds it tight when you're letting off of the parking brake. This spring pulls that tensioner arm tight, tightens up that belt. So that was broken. I ordered a new one. I knew it would take several days to get a new one, so I did this temporarily, and it worked out great. I went to Ace Hardware, and I took the old spring with me, and I just went on the shelf and I found a spring around the same length, and I put that in place, and it's been cutting just fine. Next up after that, guys, a lot of times people, if they work on these tires, they might remove the tire or put a new tire on it, or put a plug in it, and a lot of these will have keyways. This one has a bolt here, bolts it to that axle shaft, and a lot of times they'll have a key, and that might slip out if they remove the tire. If the mechanic doesn't put it back on, what will happen is you push the forward pedal and that shaft will just sit there and turn inside of that wheel, and you won't be able to even tell. Won't happen if you're bolted up, but on like the John Deere's, they'll have a key there. You can pop out, and a retainer pin. You pop that retainer pin out, and the whole wheel will come off of and hub will come off of the axle shaft, and there's a little key that goes in the keyway shaft, and that is often dropped, misplaced, or hard to see, and that axle shaft just sit there and turn inside of that wheel. It might try to move, you might feel a tendency to move forward, but it just depends on how well it's gripping inside of that hub. And last but not least, if it's the transmission. So if your transmission is getting power, that fan is sitting there spinning, and your valve is opening and it's not moving, chances are it's probably out of oil or has internal damage. Now, certain models, there will be a keyway on that input shaft for that top pulley on that transmission. That could also be stripped, so it is possible that that pulley on top of the transmission is spinning on the input shaft because the keyway is missing. But a lot of those pulleys are just kind of bolted on, pressed on. Now, another thing that happens, that I've had happen, you see that rubber plug right there? Even though this transmission is not serviceable as far as being able to change the oil, it doesn't have a drain plug, no oil filters to remove or change. So this is considered non-serviceable. Now, you could remove that plug right there, remove the transmission, flip it upside down, put new oil in it. It's not necessary really. One time I did have one of these mowers not moving, and it was because that plug right there had dry rotted and let all the oil out, and basically the transmission just needed a little bit more oil, and it moved just fine. So that could also be an issue to check out. Make sure the oil hasn't leaked out of that rubber plug right there. May just need to add some oil and put a new plug on it, and you might be back in business. All right, guys, that pretty much wraps it up for everything that I can think of why these mowers would not be moving. We've gone over most common thing, broken drive belt. Second most common is the drive belt idlers. Then look for a missing or damaged key shaft and axle shaft, the key and the axle shaft, or the input shaft for the pulley, but also broken springs, tensioner springs. There's one other thing I failed to mention. Oh, low oil, or you might have damage to the transmission. There's one other thing you need to check real quick. Let me show you. Make sure this is not pulled out. That's the transmission neutral. So that's for to transport it. When that's pulled out and the parking brake is released, you can easily pull it in neutral. So a lot of people might have it serviced or whatever, delivered. Driver might have forgotten to push this back in, or oftentimes people will move their mower around, they forget that, and they brought it in thinking they needed a transmission when all it was that lever there. Put up for this video, guys. I hope I explained it well. I hope this video helps you out in understanding how that drive belt drive system works on your riding lawn tractor. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, watch some of my other videos that I have on. I got lots of other videos showing common repairs on these mowers. But anyway, if you like this type of content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'll have more videos like this coming soon. Thanks for watching.